Okay, in this next series of videos, we are going to show you the tools and techniques that we use to build items like this. This is actually an N-track module, but it's built to be extremely lightweight yet very strong. Okay, I'm just going to give you a quick scan. Hope you stay tuned. Welcome to Warbonnet Trains. I'm your host, Dave. It's been a while since I've put out any content, and that was due to the fact that I was getting reacclimated to a new job. And now that I'm ready to, now I'm comfortable with work, I am ready to start making videos again. This is going to start a mini series, I guess you could say, which is going to be just short clips of great little tips on how to do the one thing that most all of us do, no matter what scale we're in. We all build bench work. And I'm not going to concentrate on bench work itself, but how to build it. And what I mean by how to build it is how to assemble wood properly, and not only that, good construction techniques. We're going to do this in my wood shop. My wood shop basically was built to do model railroading projects. And with this, the name of the shop is very similar to the name of this video, and it's called Warbonnet Wood Shop. Just like Warbonnet Trains, when I started the wood shop, I was intended to do videos as well, but it never really got to do it because of time constraints. The train channel was just taking off. And it was eating up most of my time, not to mention I was in transition from one job to another. So with that said, what we're going to do here is this is going to be an assembly of tips and techniques. And what I mean by that is good wood construction, good wood assembly, proper gluing techniques, stuff that the model railroader really needs to know to make sure his bench work is not only solid, but can support the weight. Not really realizing it, I'll tell you that the shelving that people build, the benchwork that people build, hold a lot of weight. And we're going to try not only to build this, but we're going to try to take some of the weight out of it. Modular construction needs to be lightweight. A lot of clubs have a lot of us guys are getting older. What I'm hearing as far as a lot of what people are telling me, the young guys really aren't getting into the clubs. So we have to make these modules so we can lift them and carry them, especially us older guys. We're not getting any younger. The modules are getting heavier and heavier for us to lift. They're getting harder and harder to get to some of these places that we're doing train shows. They have stairwells. They're not easily accessible, so they need to be easily movable. Okay, with the advent of T-track is coming up. With the advent of T-track, we're looking at a very precise construction. You're seeing a lot of these companies are coming out. They're building these things with CNC machinery. And that level of accuracy is sort of necessary. It has to be close. There is a small gap built into T-track to where even if they are off just a little bit, it gives a little bit of wiggle room for you to assemble a layout. But it helps to be precise, and that's what we're going to concentrate on here. Precision. And how do you get precision? It starts in the wood shop with your machines. So with this new series, we're going to start with the machinery. We're not going to cut any wood today, but we're going to go through tips and techniques on how to make sure your machines, or whatever you're going to use, even if you don't have a wood shop of machines, make sure your tools are set up to make precise cuts. So off to the wood shop we go. Okay, let's talk about measuring. Measuring is going to be the one most thing you're going to do. Okay, we're going to need to measure to make sure our modules are 2 foot by 4 foot, or we need to measure that our modules are so many millimeters, or we need to measure the thickness or the width of something wood so it comes out square. Measuring is important. And not so much, I'm not going to teach everybody how to measure. That's real basic. There's a lot of good YouTube videos out there that'll teach you how to measure. Okay, let's talk the devices. Combination square. Combination square are marked. They're usually etched in the metal. Very precise. A good model is going to have a laser etched graduations on the device itself. It's very accurate. They're very thin. They're very precise. That's what you're looking for. When you spend your money on a good tool, that's the accuracy you're going to have. It's all about accuracy. Okay. Tape measure. One of the very basic devices that everybody has a tape measure somewhere around. Okay. Now, does everybody have a good tape measure? And what I mean by good is it is accurate. Is it accurate? What I mean by accurate is, are the markings on the tool exactly what they say they are? Okay, and this is what I'm going to tell you. I've had a good tape measure. I've had a cheap tape measures. When I go off the same reference as I set them side by side and pull them both open, believe it or not, in less than 3 feet of distance, I've seen as much as an 1/8 inch of error. Okay, I've even seen more in some of them. It just depends on what tape measure you have. What you have. Good tape measures are accurate from one to another of the same brand. Okay, cheap tape measures, you can have a good one, and you can have another one that's off just a little bit. You can have some where the tips are loose on purpose, okay? It's doing an inside measurement and an outside measurement, but are they loose precisely? The difference between a good tape measure is, a good tape measure, they are loose precisely. A bad tape measure, variations from one rivet to another, the holes could be off a little bit, the holes in the tape itself could be off a little bit, to give you as much as, within a couple of feet, give you as much as an 1/8 inch error. Over your long distance, can be a big amount of error. The print on a cheaper tape measure is not as precise either. As these things roll through the machines, they move. The machines move. The machines are out of calibration. And many factors go into your measuring device. So how do you go around that? Let's say you got a bad tape measure. Okay. To make something square, 4 pieces have to be exactly the same length. It doesn't matter the dimension. 2 sides, as long as they're exactly the same length, as well as the 2 ends, if they are exactly the same length, when it's assembled, it's going to be square. All right. If your tape measure is off by 4 1/8 inch when you're trying to read 4 feet, 4 feet 1/8 inch, if you make one mark, cut both boards at the same time, they're going to be exactly the same length. They'll be an 1/8 inch off, which in the long run, yeah, the error is going to introduce some problems, but your boards will still be square if you cut them at the same time. There's ways to get around it. Use in your shop, unless you buy a very quality tape measure, use the same tape for all your measurements, and not only your measurements right there in the workbench that you're working on, but on your tools as well. If you're trying to measure a cut on the chop saw, use the same tape measure. Don't have different tape measures laying all the way around. If you do, get rid of them. Give them away to somebody. Use one tape measure. That will assure you that if you use the same piece as a reference, I could use a stick. I don't have to use a tape measure. If I have a stick and my stick has been cut to the length that I need, I can take that stick and set up my tool, or I can set up my bench, or I can set up a cut on any tool. As long as that stick is used, the same stick, it will be the same cut. So that's the idea of using the same tape measure. Now, if you buy a quality tape measure, sure, have one at every station. Have one at your chop saw station. Put one near your table saw so you don't have to walk all the way to the other side of the shop to get it from your chop saw. Have one here in your workbench. I keep one sitting here right on the side of my workbench. The idea is whether you're measuring in millimeter and metric system or in the imperial system, use the same measuring device if money is a factor and you're buying tools on a budget. I don't recommend buying a cheap tape measure. Buy a good tape measure. Okay, let's talk about drilling holes. Sounds simple, drilling holes, but here in the model railroad world, We're trying to make things lighter. We're trying to make things portable. Our apartments are getting smaller. We want to be able to move these things around. Heavy things are hard to move. That's all there is to it. So how do we do it? We're using thinner wood. Using thinner wood requires us to be more precise, that our holes are actually going down the center of the wood so we don't blow out the side of the wood and ruin our piece that we're working on. Okay. Hand tools. When we're talking power tools, but just your smaller power tools, I'm not talking actual floor bench like you're seeing over here. Okay, I got a floor bench. It works really great. It's set to exact 90 no matter where I measure it on the table. But can you get that kind of accuracy in a drill? And what I mean by drill is a hand drill. Okay, yes you can. You don't have to have a floor press. You can get a very precisely drilled straight hole with a hand drill. Okay, we're going to go through that. Now, does that mean go out and buy a really cheap drill? No, it doesn't, because a good drill, the chuck is going to be centered. When you pull your trigger, your bit's not going to be wobbling side to side, or your drill is not going to be offset. Where when you put your drill bit on a hole, no matter what you do to make it straight, it won't be straight. Buy a good quality set of drills. These are hand tools. If these are going to be your mainstay, you want the best tools you can afford. Okay? Now, when we're talking drilling holes, what are we drilling holes for? We're drilling holes to put screws into. We're drilling holes so we can run wire runs. We're drilling holes to put bolts through so we can bolt our modules together. What this amounts to is you don't want your modules to be shifting back and forth. You want your holes drilled precisely. Buy a good set of drill bits. You don't have to buy these huge drill bit sets. Nothing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you can buy a good quality 12-bit bit set. Okay, they're machined to an exact diameter. Accuracy counts. Spend your money on the good drill bit set. And again, don't buy the big drill bit sets. They sound like the great deals. You're going to get these drill bit sets that have 100 drill bits on it, and they're going to come out at barely $1 a piece. And let me tell you, not only are they not exactly dimensionally correct, but I've seen these sets. Some of the bits are even bent already before you get to use it the first time. Spend your money, get a small set. Get yourself a 12-bit drill bit set. It's going to be anywhere from a 1/16 up to a 3/8 inch drill bit. Money well spent. Okay. Wire runs. I've seen wire runs get as thick as 2 inches in diameter. You can get them, these larger layouts that have a lot of animation, or is going to have big, thick wire runs. Okay. Making holes. Good example of a drill bit. This is a Forstner bit. It'll get you a hole anywhere from 3 inches. I mean, I've even seen them bigger, but usually they're 3 inches and smaller, clear down to, and again, you can probably get them down to about a quarter, half inch, right around there, and still get an accurate one. Don't have to have these, but they're really great to have. That makes drilling holes very, very easy if you need a large diameter hole. Okay, if you don't have the money for a Forstner bit set, spade bits will work. You won't get quite the precise clean hole out of it, but it will do the job. You're going to get a little tear out on the back. One way to get around that, just clamp a block to the back so you can drill into it, and you'll keep the tear out to a minimum. Although it'll still happen, it won't be as much as if you just blow this bit out the other side. Okay, and you can get this fairly large. But here's what I'm going to tell you. The bigger the bit, when it's chewing through the wood, your cheap drills just aren't going to take it. Again, I can't stress that. Buy a good drill. And you don't have to buy this drill, but buy a good drill. Okay? Drilling holes to put screws in. In the quest for a lighter module, your wood is going to get thinner. I have built modules with as small as a 1/2 inch plywood. Now, today's plywood's not even quite 1/2 inch. It's about a 1/16 shy. So this stuff gets really thin. And when you got a drill on the side of it, and what I mean by the side of it, if you look at your board and you got to put a hole on the side just like this, You don't want your bit to be crooked and actually blow out the side of your workpiece. Your screw is going to follow the hole no matter how hard you try. It's going to follow that hole. And if your hole is crooked, and when it's crooked, it's going to pull your wood together crooked because the hole is crooked. That's just how it is. It's going to pull it out of square. When your hole is crooked in the face, when the two pieces meet and you start torquing it down a little bit, the two pieces are going to slide because the screw being crooked is going to try to pull the wood in the direction that the screw is actually angled to. Drill straight holes. When we go through actual drilling practices, we're going to show you a couple of jigs to make sure your holes are actually straight. Basic combination square. Now, for a basic level shop, and again, you don't have to have a wood shop, but I do recommend that you spend the money on your measuring devices. Combination square, make sure you get a straight one. Buy the square, check it, just like I told you. Put it on a flat surface, just strike a line, flip it, strike another line. Make sure it's perfectly square. If it's not, take it back, get another one. Believe it or not, these are bad from one to another. You will get a bad one every now and then. The manufacturing of these, you know, especially the China-made stuff, and it doesn't even have to be China-made stuff. It just has to be a manufacturer that didn't put the precise quality into manufacturing. If it's not square, maybe it's just something inside the square. These things do have a sliding surface. Maybe the sliding surface has been damaged. Maybe the tool's been dropped. Maybe there's just sawdust in it. Make sure they're clean. They should move freely. Okay, your tools should be. Take care of your tools. These are precise measuring devices. Treat them like that. You don't want to keep these out to where there's moisture. If your square has accumulated rust, the rust doesn't form in a perfectly precise line. What's going to happen? Your line is not going to be straight. Okay? Throw those away. Buy a new one. Although these aren't, a good one is not cheap, it is money well spent, because this is a tool that if you take care of it, it's going to last you a long, long time. This is going to be money that you will use constantly. When you got to go and measure a square item, it's going to work for you. Okay. Top of that, a lot of us use sheet goods. What I mean by that, 4x8 sheets of plywood, 2x4 sheets of plywood. Whatever dimension you're gonna buy, you're gonna need something that you're gonna strike a line. You don't want to have to strike a line from one side, have to flip it over, strike it from the other side. And what I'm talking about is one mating face, even if when they're manufactured. Now, people say use the manufacturer's side because it's probably square. You know, I've bought plywood from the big box stores, and they're not square. Most of them are not square. So make sure that if you're going to draw a line, make sure the device that you're going to draw the line with will reach all the way across, so you have reference from one corner. So, nice T-square. Make sure it's straight. And again, if it's not straight, take it back. Buy a new one. Have them trade it, or buy a better quality one. A better quality one, usually you won't have to take back. Okay? I'm not going to get into brands or anything like that because there are cheap models that are good. Okay? But you got to check them, because the cheaper they get, from one to another, you will have inconsistencies. You just want to make sure the one that you buy is square. Okay? With everything said that we've just gone over, I'm going to go over a basic set of tools that it's going to take to construct whatever you're going to make. Module, layout, T-track modules, shelf layout, whatever it's going to be. What I'm going to show you is very basic. Is it a little harder to use? Yeah, a little harder to use, but they will get the job done. So if you don't want to go out and buy a whole garage full of machines, you don't have to. What I'm going to show you will get it done. Now, are there cheaper tools? Yes, they are. They're harder to use. They're harder to use correctly. and they won't give you the quality that you're going to look for if you're going to be putting your layout inside the house, which is half the problems. You know, half the problems we get resistance from our other halves about building a layout in a home is the fact that it looks like something you made out in a garage. It's not a piece of furniture. And I'm not saying we're going to construct a piece of furniture, but I am saying that whatever you make, let's make it look good so it's presentable in the house. Okay, so let's go over our list. First thing, let's start with the basic stuff. Hammer. Gonna need a hammer. The idea of the hammer is most of the wood we're buying is going to be pine. Why? Because it's cheap. That's how we are. We're going to get the cheapest wood. Is the pine straight? Not all of it. If you buy good quality pine, yeah, it'll be fairly straight. But knowing most of us, we're going to get the cheapest set of pine that we can get. 1x4s, they're not really straight like they should be. You're going to need a little persuasion to put them together. So you'll need a hammer. Next thing, Phillips screwdriver. Most of the screws that we're going to be using, or at least that I use, are going to be Phillips. I use a little bit more. I have built some outdoor stuff where the wood is going to be in the elements. So some of the screws that I use are deck screws. They're more complicated screw heads, so they're usually Torx or something of that nature, square drive. But for the most part, everything in the house, Phillips screwdriver. And as we talked earlier, combination square. Buy a good one. Don't go cheap on the square. This is going to make or break your angle cuts. No matter how good a saw you have, if the reference line that you draw is not straight, your project is going to be crooked. No two ways about it. Okay. If you work alone a lot, and you have a bigger project, you're going to tend to have to hold stuff on one end and be on the other to drive a screw. You can't be in two places at once. Clamps. These are good helpers in the shop. You don't need but a couple of them, but they are a great help. I work alone a lot in my shop, and you'll find as we go through these videos, I'm going to give you these little tips that I do. I make these little jigs that help me assemble something, especially if it's real big and I can't reach the other side to hold it together. These clamps are a great help. Drill bits. Don't go cheap on the drill bits. And you can see most everything I built in my shop, I have built with this little set of drill bits. We're not talking a bunch, okay? Just a small set, that's all you need. But get a quality set. The idea of it is pine is a very soft wood. It splinters very easily. It's easy to rip out the back where it's a big blowout hole in the back. Good set of sharp bits is what you want. Take care of them. Don't drop them. They are the point on the bits are easily damaged if you drop it on a concrete floor. If you got a rubber floor, don't worry about it. Don't worry about you don't have to worry about dropping stuff so much. But here in my shop, I have a concrete floor, which about 80% of us is what we have. Some of us do have some plastic floors. Some of us do have wood chops. We have rubber matting, stuff like that. Keep it in the area where you work. Protect your stuff. Don't drop them. To go along with that, a quality set of drill drivers. This is a different set than what I showed earlier, but we have here, I have a Bosch set. This is a tiny little drill set, but I'll tell you, these are pretty pricey. They are a really good quality tool, and the reason why I say that is these are my travel set. Maybe I'll do a video of what I keep in my travel box. I do on-the-road repairs as well as layout construction, stuff like that. I need something that's compact. I can put in my truck. I don't have to, I can keep in my toolbox, and when I carry it in, I have them. I don't have to go back out to the truck to get them. But this is my point. If you are using these to compensate for a floor drill, if you're drilling holes in something, like say drilling down the leg to get a screw-in stop, and that drill bit is going way far down in there, that's a lot of resistance. You're asking a lot from these little guys. The motors will not last long. If you go to Harbor Freight or a discount store like that and you're buying those cheap drills, keep in mind those little motors will not last very long. At the very most, I've seen them. I've watched it happen right in front of me. I'm at a guy's house. He's got a cheap drill. We're going through a project. 2-3 hours into the project, the drill starts smelling funny, and the reason why is the motor's just burning up inside. It is blistering hot. Now these things, I'll tell you, they will get hot, but these things are made to withstand the heat. Okay, so I'm going to turn you a little bit. If you're asking your drill to do the job of one of these machines here on the side, I got a floor press here. If you're asking these little guys to do the job of one of those, buy a good one, because it's worth every penny. You know, when you're done with your layout, you're going to use these things all over the house. I guarantee you. Get a good one. If you get a set, you'll save a little money. These things are real convenient. This is the impact hammer. You can put your driver bit in this one. You can put your drill bit in this one. Nice things to go. Even if you don't use your drill driver, both of them come with batteries. If you're working a lot, if you're building a big project, both batteries keep you running. While you got, if you kill one, take the battery out of the other, put it in. While you're charging the first one, you can still work. So that's the idea of these sets. They'll save you money in the long run. Okay, let's talk sawing. Yeah, we can get away with a handsaw, but do we really want to use it? I don't recommend it. And the reason why is straight cuts are hard to do. They can be done, but they're hard to do. They take a long time to do. It just makes a project just long and tedious. It is worth the money to get some sort of skill saw. Okay, and this is what I mean. It's a circular saw. All right, I'm not promoting rigid. Rigid is just what I have. It's what I use. I like them because of their guarantee. They're a good saw. They're a straight saw. When I buy the saws, and again, I go through the same idea. If I take the saw out of the box, I check to make sure that it's true. And what I mean by true is the blade is actually parallel with the platform that it's mounted to. If it is not, I take it back. Don't settle for a saw because it's crooked. Don't settle for it because you think that's how they're supposed to be. That's wrong. There's something wrong with a saw if the blade is not parallel with its base. It has to be, because a lot of the cuts that we do, especially if you're relying on this saw to do the job of a table saw, the blade has to be parallel with its base. If it's not, take it back. Okay, I can't stress that enough. Once you use a saw, it's hard for these shops to take a job, to take a piece of equipment back. I mean, most of them do. Is it right? No. Make these manufacturers make the stuff right. Okay, so take the stuff back if it's not correct. Okay, the next thing, sanding. All right. Recommend getting a sanding block. I mean, you don't have to buy them. I bought this one. This is an excellent sanding block. I love it. It's got a Velcro base. The sandpaper just kind of attaches right to it. Buy quality sandpaper. Don't get the cheap stuff. It's just nagging. It's a nag on me that if I get a piece of sandpaper and I start sanding a piece of wood, not 10, 15 strokes, I got to knock the dust out of it because it's clogged up. Spend the money on good sandpaper. I'm not going to tell you which brand to use. This is part of the research that you guys got to do. It's a YouTube thing. Get online, look at the reviews, go with the good set of sandpaper, because you'll find you're going to use less of it. It's going to work better for you. It's going to do the job faster. It's going to do the finish like it's supposed to. Okay. You don't have to buy, like I said earlier, you don't have to buy another one. Get yourself a block of wood. As long as a block of wood is flat, it's a good sanding block. Okay. If you have a huge project, again, and what I mean a large project, it doesn't have to be extremely large. Let's just say it's a 4x8 layout. There's a lot of sanding on a 4x8 layout, because if you're putting the 4x8 layout in the house, there's a lot of exposed wood that you want to be smooth. You're going to be rubbing on it. People are going to walk against it. They're going to snag their clothes on it. You're going to get splinters. You want to do sanding. And when you have a large project like that, and I'm calling a 4x8 layout large, even though it's not a large layout, it's a large wood project. Buy a sander. It is worth every penny. And again, I'm not pinging on rigid. I like rigid. It's the tools that I have. I bought them on sale. Makita's excellent. So is DeWalt. Any of the companies are good. But again, you know, buy one that uses a very standard sanding disc. And again, don't go cheap on the sanding disc. Just because it's a power tool doesn't mean that a cheap sanding disc is going to work well because it's a power tool. Get good sanding discs. Okay. Now, that's all the equipment. All of what I just showed you is going to build a layout. Is there many more tools? Yeah, there's crosscut saws, and I'm talking chop saws, miter saws. There's table saws, there's band saws, there's many other tools that you can need, but what I just showed you will get the job done. Now, with that, just like Norm Abram, let's talk safety. Two things at the minimum. Now, there's a lot of safety gear out there, but I'm going to show you two things that you have to have. No matter what tools you use, make sure you get the safety glasses. I swear by them. I use them in the shop. I wear them out. I use them so much. Okay. If you can't see through the lenses, throw them away and buy a new one. There's nothing worse than being around a saw that has an extremely sharp blade that you got your fingers right next to and you can't see because these things aren't good. You're going to be tempted not to wear them because you can't see through it. Don't do a job without wearing your safety gear. And the same thing in my shop, I don't have a dedicated dust collection system, so it gets very, very dusty in here. Use a dust mask, and don't buy a cheap one, guys. These are your lungs, okay? Buy a good dust mask. These are made by Fast Cap. They're excellent. They got an exhale valve. It directs the exhale, my breath away from my glasses so they don't fog up in the middle of a cut. Nothing more dangerous, and it's just like driving through fog. It's worse. You got your fingers next to a spinning blade. Who knows where your fingers are if you can't see through your fogged up glasses? Get a good dust mask. And this is the bare minimum. This is what I use here. Okay, so I hope at the very least I've got you into the introduction about the woodworking. The next videos we're going to have, we're actually going to get into some construction methods. So stay tuned, and if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe. This is a good series. I see a lot of people that show off their bench work, but I see very few that show off actual construction, so I hope this helps you. Subscribe, like, and share if you think somebody else can use this information.